Hi, and welcome to the program. Tropical Storm Helene is moving up through the southeast today. Last night, it absolutely roared ashore in Florida as a monster Category 4 hurricane with devastating winds and powerful storm surge.
Millions of people are now without power. CBN's Operation Blessing is on the scene to help those hit by this deadly storm, and Charlene Aaron has the story.
Overnight, Hurricane Helene slammed into Florida, south of Tallahassee, with heavy rain and winds topping 140 miles per hour. The storm prompting a rare extreme wind warning, with forecasters calling it exceptionally dangerous and life-threatening. In Tampa, roads looked like rivers, and video shows transformers exploding.
This storm is raging. I have got flooding so bad you can't even imagine.
Near St. Petersburg, this hotel lobby completely underwater, and the storm turning deadly after a sign fell onto a vehicle on Interstate 4, killing the driver. In Cedar Key, this man staying to ride out the storm.
It's the worst storm I've ever been in my whole life, and right now it feels like the whole island is coming apart. The storm surge is closing in on three sides. Several of our streets are impassable. There are trees down everywhere. The wind sounds like a freight train outside right now.
Those who defied mandatory evacuation orders asked to write their name, birth date, and other information on their arms or legs so they can be identified. Facing potentially serious damage and life-threatening conditions, residents have been frustrated with having to deal with yet another hurricane.
It's like a bad dream over and over. It's like as soon as you get cleaned up for one storm, 6 months later, you're getting hit again, or 8 months later, you're getting hit again.
Some were still trying to get out as water began filling roads. More than 1 million homes and businesses are without power. Last summer, Hurricane Idalia brought about 9 feet of storm surge in the same region in Florida where Helene hit, leaving most homes underwater. Helene expected to deliver catastrophic storm surge of some 20 feet. CBN's Operation Blessing arrived ahead of the storm in Mariana, Florida.
We are looking at anywhere between 5 to 20 foot of storm surge. Just to give you an idea, 20 foot of storm surge looks like a 2-story house completely submerged underwater.
Operation Blessing was already in place to meet the physical and spiritual needs of those impacted by the storm.
We have actually brought our mobile kitchen with us so that as soon as the storm passes, we can start evaluating the areas and seeing if there's a need that arises for feeding operations.
Operation Blessing also prepared with other essential supplies, such as chainsaws, shovels, and coolers, to assist residents with cleanup and recovery after the storm.
Just meeting them where they're at, just like Jesus would ask us to do. OB is very committed to being able to do that with others and to show and spread not only the light and the gospel, but the love that we have deep in our hearts.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Even with the warnings and media coverage about this storm, I think it's still taken a lot of folks by surprise. And if you're seeing the footage on other networks as well, you're seeing the destruction is horrendous, this flooding. And as I speak, it's still raging. Now, what's going to happen if you've never been in a disaster zone after a hurricane, for instance? I've been able to be with Operation Blessing on many times reporting. And when people get back to their homes, they are literally going to be staring at their property, what's left of it, or walking in circles because they're also dealing with trauma. So they have to pick up the pieces regarding their home and moving forward, and they're traumatized. And what Operation Blessing is able to do is put an arm around people and say, we're here for you. Let us begin to help you pick up the pieces. Also, for first responders and those who volunteer to help. I mean, it's even cutting trees off of houses. We have volunteers who do that in coming days. These relief workers, at the end of a day where they're probably sleeping on a church floor, need and desire a hot meal. And we're able to do that as well. We can't help everybody, every family in every state, but we can make a tremendous difference in many communities working with churches. So the time is now to help Operation Blessing. If you'd like to do so, we value your contribution. Please give us a call, 1-800-700-7000, or you can go to ob.org/OB-disaster. Again, ob.org/OB-disaster. Numerous states are in deep deep trouble now, and we need to hear from you. And we can be the hands and feet of Jesus, as you heard in that report. It's a great opportunity to step up and show the love of Christ. People are listening right now. In other news, the presidential race is in the home stretch, and both candidates are focusing on key swing states that will decide who wins the White House. Wendy Griffith has that story and more from our CBN newsroom. Wendy.
Thanks, Andrew. Pennsylvania may prove to be the most important swing state of all, giving the winner the victory in the Electoral College. Polls show an extremely tight race there. CBN's Jenna Browder traveled to the Keystone State to talk with voters.
It's election season in all-important Pennsylvania. From the big cities to the small towns and communities.
We'll do that for you from the White House, all right?
Both campaigns are crisscrossing the state and spending big bucks here. And for good reason. Pennsylvania has 19 electoral votes, more than any other battleground state. And if history is any indication, voters here have picked 10 of the last 12 presidential winners.
Kamala Harris, of course.
In Philadelphia, we found overwhelming support for Vice President Harris.
I feel as though she's more for the people, women's rights, and just for the people.
And that's expected. Harris has to run up her numbers here and in other big cities. She also has to build on Democrats' success in surrounding suburbs.
This race will not be won in Pittsburgh or Philadelphia.
Selena Zito with the Washington Examiner lives in Pennsylvania and is very familiar with the state's politics.
This race will be won in other counties by about 500 extra voters in each county over what happened in 2020.
And that's why both campaigns are making Pennsylvania's rural communities a priority.
This is Johnstown in western Pennsylvania. The area went for Trump in 2016 and 2020, but this time around, the Harris campaign could see an opportunity.
She's for people.
In the downtown area, we found more support for Harris than former President Trump.
I'm a small business owner, and she's all about, helping small businesses.
But if signs on the edges of town and those lining every road we traveled mean anything, Trump remains as strong as ever in this part of the state.
I'm a Trump guy, and I'm voting for Donald Trump.
25 miles north in Indiana, Pennsylvania, Trump enthusiasm appeared as electric as ever. Thousands coming from across western Pennsylvania to support the 45th president, some waiting upwards of 10 hours in the rain to get in.
Sometimes we don't like the mean tweets and so forth, but his policies are spot on for this country, and we need help.
I work for my money. I don't want to keep giving it away.
One group of women even drove all the way from upstate New York.
And what made you all want to come 6 hours to be here?
We love President Trump, and I feel like it's now more important than ever to actually show your support for a candidate, and he's definitely gonna win.
Trump is looking to expand his numbers in these rural counties that he carried with more than 70% in 2020. He also needs to chip away at Harris's strength in the big cities and suburbs. Other key areas of the state include Northampton and Erie counties, both bellwethers for the race.
I expect a lot of time spent by Trump and Vance in Erie. That is the most important county, not just in the state, but in the entire country. As go Erie County, so goes the rest of the country.
The X factor in it all is turnout. Polling in Pennsylvania consistently shows about 95% of voters already have their minds made up. The goal for both campaigns is to attract just a few from the other camp. In this all-important battleground state, we'll be watching closely on election night. In Pennsylvania, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thanks, Jenna. Some say as Pennsylvania goes, so goes the nation. The election, we'll see. Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will address the UN today. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, his speech comes while Israel's enemies continue their rocket attacks and many nations call for a ceasefire.
Air raid sirens rang out across Tel Aviv early today as the Houthis aimed a missile at Israel's high-tech center from Yemen. The Israeli military said its Arrow anti-missile system intercepted it. In Beirut, the IDF eliminated another top Hezbollah commander, this time the one who oversaw the terror group's drones and cruise missiles. Mohammed Swar was also at one point a top advisor to the Houthis in Yemen on how best to use their drones and missiles. That attack came as the White House is upset that Israel is rejecting an international call for a ceasefire, especially after the Americans say they believe top Israelis had already given tacit approval to that very public appeal.
We wouldn't have issued it when and how we did if it wasn't supported by the conversations that we are having with top Israeli officials yesterday, and those conversations continue today.
An Israeli government spokesman clarified Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's position.
Reports about a ceasefire being already agreed are not accurate. The Prime Minister's reiterated that, yes, of course, Israel is open to diplomacy, as we have been. It's always our go-to option.
After Netanyahu landed in the U.S. for a speech today at the UN, he again made clear why he wants to keep up the war on Hezbollah.
My policy, our policy is clear. We're continuing to strike Hezbollah with full force, and we will not stop until we reach all our goals. Chief among them, the return of the residents of the north securely to their homes.
In his UN speech, Netanyahu is expected to argue that Israel's offensive attacks on Hezbollah and Hamas are a justified defense against those terror groups' war to wipe out Jews and the Jewish state. Netanyahu's address comes after Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas made his case to the UN Thursday. Although he talked about establishing a Palestinian state alongside Israel, he also hinted at kicking the Jews out of what he called Palestine.
It will remain ours, and if anyone were to leave, it would be the occupying usurpers.
Abbas also claimed the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the holiest site in Judaism, is, quote, exclusive property of Muslims. On Thursday night, nearly 50,000 Jews gathered next to the Temple Mount to pray for the swift return of the hostages, the safety of the soldiers, and for the security and unity of the people of Israel. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Andrew, Israel continuing to defend itself on all fronts.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. As things continue to escalate, I was just thinking this morning, looking at the news, you know, the United States is in this natural disaster. Horrific what's going on. And Gaza, Israel, and the war keeps escalating, more and more violence. And we're in a political season. There is a lot in the news to keep us anxious and draw our attention. And I just, in some prayer time, felt led to Isaiah 26, where the word says, you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast on you, Lord, because we trust in you. And all that's going on in the world and all that can take our attention and cause us anxiety and stress. Let's remember, if you're watching this program and you love the Lord, have Scripture and Christ be your foundation. It's all that's happening. Pray for Israel, pray for the region, but stay grounded in the Word. And I pray for you, Romans 15, may the God of hope fill you with all peace and joy as you're overpowered by the Holy Spirit of God. We have peace in Jesus in a volatile world. Remember that today. There is peace in the Lord. With the election weeks away, both presidential candidates are focused on the economy and problems here at home. Yet for many voters, foreign policy is also a major concern, especially when it comes to dealing with the world's superpowers. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke brings us this look at where the nominees stand on diplomatic relations.
With Russia at war in Ukraine and increasing aggression in the Indo-Pacific from China, whoever takes over the White House will need a clear foreign policy agenda.
I think the place I'd begin is to recognize that even though the headlines often seem terrible, the United States remains in a fairly strong strategic position worldwide. We're not fighting any other great powers. We have the strongest system of alliances in history.
When it comes to those relationships, Vice President Kamala Harris says if elected, she would continue to stand by America's partners and ensure the U.S. remains a global leader. She accuses her opponent of taking a more isolationist approach.
Just imagine Donald Trump with no guardrails and how he would use the immense powers of the presidency of the United States. Not to improve your life, not to strengthen our national security, but to serve the only client he has ever had, himself.
The former president has been critical of alliances like NATO, and if elected, is expected to insist member countries increase contributions to the organization and overall defense spending. As president, he significantly increased the Pentagon's budget and made China and Russia his national security priorities. During the recent ABC News debate, Trump pointed to strong relationships with both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, claiming Russia would not have invaded Ukraine if he were in office.
I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Harris says her administration would continue to support Ukraine's defensive efforts against Russia for as long as it takes.
Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland.
I think both candidates have said useful things about how to go forward. Trump has underscored that he wants the war to end. I'm sure Harris agrees, but she also wants to underscore that Ukraine is in the right and deserves to have its sovereignty and territory and people protected. I think if we begin with those points, we can actually work our way towards a reasonable policy.
Meanwhile, when it comes to China, Michael O'Hanlon with the Brookings Institution believes that Beijing's aggressive stance toward Taiwan will be a major issue for the next president.
China thinks Taiwan's part of China, and we try to deter China by telling Beijing we might respond with U.S. military force if they were to do so, even though there's no American treaty and it's not a formal alliance. That's a delicate line to walk, and it requires sophistication. And both Harris and Trump are going to, either one would have to learn, I think, how to handle that well.
O'Hanlon tells CBN News he'd also like to hear more from both candidates regarding both North Korea and Iran, and encourages each to have a broad priority list when it comes to foreign policy.
I come back to a framing that General Joseph Dunford employed when he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff from 2015 to 2019. And he used to talk about 4+1. Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and terrorism/extremism/crime. And I think if we prepare against all 5 of those threats, we're probably doing about as well as we can by way of vigilance.
One last issue that combines key foreign and domestic policy is border security. That's a major topic for Trump, who says he would bring back border policies he had in place while also implementing large-scale deportations. Harris says she would work to bring back President Biden's bipartisan border security bill and focus on more comprehensive immigration reform. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Caitlin. Here's the thing, just like the story earlier we saw, it's the swing states. And in these areas, Israel, Gaza, threats from China, international diplomacy, Trump's ahead in 6 key swing states, and that's where the election is won. We'll see what happens. Sam is good with numbers, and he has an MBA. Still, he had trouble balancing his budget. At one point, he was behind on his bills, deep in debt, and evicted from his home.
Sam ODURO and his wife Nan live in northern New Jersey. Sam works in New York City at the #3 accounting firm in the world. He's approached with multiple job offers on a regular basis. In 2016, Sam's career began with an unexplained job loss right after college. The company gave him 2 weeks of severance pay, but he had no more than $2,000 to his name.
I was living off of credit cards and I started to pay all my operating expenses, phone bill, car insurance. Eventually, I didn't have the money to pay for rent. So I had an eviction notice at my door one day, and that same day, while I'm reading the eviction notice, I hear like a tow truck. The bank seized my car for missed payments. I have 3 days to get out of my apartment. Just didn't know what's next.
When Sam reached out to family and friends for help, it was just enough to stay in his apartment and temporarily keep his car. Sam leaned into his faith.
I said, Lord, you're all I have, literally, you know? So I went on my knees and prayed, fasted for those 3 days.
For several months, Sam drove for a rideshare company to make ends meet. He remained steadfast in his faith.
Driving in a rideshare with an MBA was very humbling, if you want to say. And I was like, how can I be in this situation right now? I quickly tried to build my faith by looking for sermons. One of the few I found on YouTube was Pastor David Ireland at Christ Church in New Jersey here, and he was on YouTube preaching on the difference between first fruit and tithing.
Sam soon began to put this into practice. Shortly after, he landed a new job in time to give his initial first fruits offering from his first paycheck.
It was an opportunity to practice first fruit right there.
Then, just a few months later, Sam received an increase in pay and multiple new job offers, one of which he accepted.
The thoughts of not giving during that time definitely went through my head when I was coming out of, such financial crisis. During my time, I received about 20% raise in salary, and so I put other people to the test.
Sam got that very opportunity after inviting Nan, who was his work colleague at the time, to church.
I thought church would be a very serious place and no laugh or joy. I was pretty moved for the first time, and I actually cried.
Nan became a Christian shortly after, and then 8 months later, they began dating. At that time, while Nan was desperately searching for a new job, Sam introduced her to the principle of tithing.
I remember my first tithing check. I just remember this unbelievable, beyond understanding peace that I felt that I'm going to find a job.
After praying, fasting, and tithing faithfully for 37 days, Nan was interviewed for and offered the job she so desperately needed.
It just happened so quickly and smoothly.
In 2021, Sam and Nan married, and he remained with the same firm for several more years. Likewise, Nan continued to progress at her job as well and received 2 promotions and 2 raises within a single year.
When we realize the power of tithing, I think it's worth it.
Today, Sam and Nan continue their lifestyle of tithing and giving regularly. They live financially secure with their newborn son, Elam, and 0 debt. Sam and Nan believe this is directly correlated with their choice to tithe faithfully.
I don't believe it's a fluke. I believe it's a combination of, tithing, first fruit, and giving and trusting the Lord, but also, hard work as well. When I look back to that, I'm very thankful. Sometimes as I stand and just looking over New York City, I'm just like, Lord, thank you so much.
What a beautiful family, and don't you love seeing that gorgeous New York skyline? Here's a gentleman who's evicted and his car seized on the same day, but then says he comes to a season where he says, I want to build my faith. And part of his faith being built was stewardship with finances for the Lord. And then he tells Nan about it, and then she finds great freedom in saying, when I tithed the first time, I felt tremendous peace, this great peace. This is something supernatural in the kingdom of God. We read about it in Malachi chapter 3. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and test me now in this, says the Lord. If I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you a blessing, there will not be room enough to receive it. God can do great and mighty things when we surrender everything, all of ourselves to Him, including our finances. Now, if you'd like to partake in a ministry that loves to help people around the world and where you can say, Lord, I want to give to others, that's the greatest part of this. We're giving to other people, helping folks around the world. You can become a 700 Club member. It's just $20 a month, 65 cents a day. And to do so, you can give us a call, 1-800-700-7000, or simply text CBN to 71777 and join the 700 Club. Help people around the world and partner with what God is doing for hurting people. Terry?
Well, when you join the 700 Club, we've got a great gift for you. We want to send you something to strengthen your prayer life. So be sure to look for Pray with Power. It's a booklet. It's going to follow you through 40 days to transform that prayer life, and we want you to have it. I have a great story to tell you about right now. I want you to hear about a little boy named Cheng. Cheng felt someone was pounding on his heart with a hammer. His body was getting weaker every day, and his neighbors wouldn't help when he needed money for surgery, but you did.
Cheng always asked his father if he could go to the mountains and help him with his farming.
I finally agreed, but I regretted it.
I had only climbed a small bit before my hands started to shake and I could barely breathe.
His face was pale and his lips were purple. I carried him home on my back and I could feel his heart beating really fast. I didn't know what was wrong with him.
Doctors at the local clinic said Cheng was just malnourished. The family is poor, so his mother went to the city to work so the couple could get better food for Cheng. Yet he only got worse.
It felt like someone was pounding on my heart with a little hammer. Sometimes I would get all sweaty.
When he was 7, Cheng had a routine health exam at school where doctors discovered that he had a hole in his heart, and it had been growing since he was a baby.
A classmate told me that if someone has a heart problem, they could die. After that, I was scared every day, and I was angry that my body didn't work right.
Still, it didn't stop him from trying to roller skate like the other kids. Yet when he tried, he collapsed.
I was dizzy and nauseous. My skin turned cold and purple. I was a very sick boy. My body was getting weaker every day, and I didn't know how long I would live.
I went from house to borrow money for surgery, but everyone turned me down. There was nothing I could do until one day a teacher said they found an organization called Operation Blessing that would help. It was a miracle.
Soon, Cheng got heart surgery.
We couldn't believe that strangers would help us like that. Operation Blessing volunteers said the love comes from Jesus. We've never received this kind of love. I'm thankful to God for it, and I also thank Operation Blessing donors for giving my son a chance on life.
No matter how long I play, I'm never tired. I'm full of energy and I'm breathing well. Now I can climb the mountain faster than my father. I'm happy every day and my life is full of hope and joy.
This father so exhibits what I think any of us would feel if our child had a significant problem that could be fixed and we simply did not have the means to do it. And you had to watch him get sicker and weaker, sicker and weaker. 700 Club members, thank you. Thank you for caring enough to say, we can make a difference. We will make a difference. That's what you do when you join the 700 Club. We thank you in advance for those of you who are going to do it today because you've seen the stories of how you can make a difference. 65 cents a day, $20 a month can solve lives' problems for so many of these people. It changes their lives. We invite you to be a part of that. There are lots of club levels you can join at. Let me show you your options. You might want to join at 700 Club Gold. That's a gift of $40 a month. Our 1,000 Club members join us at $84 a month. Maybe the 2,500 Club is for you. It's $2,500 a year. That works out to $209 a month. And then our founders join us, $5,000 a year. That works out to $417 a month. Listen, ask God what he'd have you do, and then call, because there are so many people truly hurting in the world, and we can make a difference. So 1-800-700-7000 is the number to call. Just say you want to join the 700 Club, or you can also go to cbn.com if you prefer to join us that way, or you can text CBN to 71777, and we thank you in advance. Andrew?
And I'd like to show you how you're helping people right here at home. Brenda had to stop working because of a major health problem. Ben had to cut back on his hours to take care of his wife. And all told, this couple was forced to live on a fraction of their income at a time when they struggled like never before. But you gave them hope.
She was given pretty much a death sentence. We didn't know what to do. It's like everything just went downhill.
When Ben and Brenda got the news that Brenda was in end-stage kidney failure and needed a transplant, their lives were turned upside down.
Because we thought that it was something that we could work with a diet, and now we knew that it was her kidneys totally shutting down and it wasn't reversible.
With Brenda no longer able to work and Ben needing to be her caregiver, the couple's income took a major hit.
I lost a lot of time at work because I would go to every single appointment. All the food prices were going up, everything was going up, so we were stretched financially.
That's when they turned to the Lighthouse Gospel Mission, a partner of Operation Blessing.
God was just providing food, and the next thing we know, we had a refrigerator full of food. We didn't have to worry about it, and it made us feel good because we had the evidence of God. It was a constant reminder of how blessed we were.
During that time, they started going to church again.
Even though we were suffering through our own thing, we were actually doing a lot better at that time because I had really gotten my life back with the Lord. So there was a little light of hope. So the only thing left was her healing.
They were told Brenda could wait 3 to 5 years for a kidney. But after just 10 months on the transplant list, Brenda got her new kidney and soon made a full recovery. Now they are thriving, and both are serving in full-time ministry.
We started to minister to others and let them know that there is hope.
Thanks to you, Ben and Brenda got the help they needed to get through one of the most difficult times of their lives.
If you want really to impact and change your life, sow into Operation Blessing. Sow into the lives of those that have lost hope, to give them hope. It exceeds a lot more than just a monetary gift. It's a life being changed. And that life change can help change somebody else's life.
How beautiful to hear Ben talk about hope and life change. Now, he said we had a full refrigerator, which is wonderful. That's a tangible need you helped that lovely couple meet. But he talked about life change and hope. And that is why we do what we do, thanks to folks like you. If you've never partnered with us here at CBN, today's a great day to do so. You just say, I want to join the 700 Club. It's $20 a month. And when you do, by the way, we want to send you something to invest back to you in your spiritual walk. And it is called Pray with Power. Charlene and Gordon have done some dynamic teachings on praying the Word of God. If you feel like your prayer life is kind of deficient, lacking power and vitality, this teaching is for you. Pray with Power will transform your prayer life because it teaches you how to pray the Word of God. And there's nothing more powerful. Just follow this Pray with Power booklet for 40 days, and this amazing power will be released in your own life.
And welcome back to the 700 Club for this CBN News Break. In Wilkesboro, North Carolina, tens of thousands of people turned out for Faith Fest NC 2024. It's a Christian festival with the goal to lift up and glorify Jesus. Hundreds made decisions to surrender their lives to Christ there. Evangelist Franklin Graham was among the speakers. The 7th annual event is a part of Craig Church Ministries. Pastor Craig, the founder and executive director, says the event attracts many thousands every year. Well, in Guatemala, CBN's Operation Blessing is helping provide clean drinking water. These banana farmers are hardworking but very poor. When the wells dry in the summer, families are forced to get water from dirty, snake-infested rivers. Well, that all changed when a team from Operation Blessing arrived. They dug an 80-foot well to reach an underground source, then pumped the water through a series of filters before collecting it in a very large tank. Now, thanks to OB's partners, this clean and delicious water is being pumped directly to every household, church, and school. We know it was delicious because they told us. And you can learn more about Operation Blessing by visiting ob.org.
Four words from Michael Phillips' first grade teacher dashed his dream of becoming a lawyer. She said, "That will never happen." Those words set Michael on a path of self-destruction. So today, Michael is working hard to make sure what happened to him never happens to another child.
Michael Phillips is on a mission to transform lives.
My personal passion and heart is for humanity as a whole. My call shows individuals that human lives are redeemable.
And he believes that starts with changing the education system, the same one that once crushed his own dreams.
When I was 6 years old, for career day, I decided to, for my project, emulate Thurgood Marshall. My teacher leaned over to me and told me that I would never be able to be a lawyer, that would never happen. At that time, the only thing I could feel was anger.
Coming up in the inner city schools of Baltimore, Michael was continually told he had no future, despite getting good grades and being a standout athlete.
I was constantly being told I would end up in jail, or I would not amount to anything. For a long time, those words sat on me because they became compounded by the additional words that people would speak of my life.
Michael would prove them wrong and graduated high school with a 4.0 and a full-ride college basketball scholarship. Then, just before his freshman semester, a violent car crash left him so badly injured, it cost him his scholarship.
I literally thought my life was done because I had tied my future and my destiny to making it as an athlete. The emotional trauma and stress of not being able to be a basketball player was extremely overwhelming to me.
Although he still went to school, the depression became too much. Michael dropped out and returned home to Baltimore, where he turned to the only option he thought he had: selling drugs.
As a little kid, when you wanted to see a successful person that looked like you would go down to the corner and to the guys who were selling drugs because they looked successful and they looked like they were having fun and they had the cars and they had the clothes. And so this was my only shot then to take matters into my own hands and try to make the best out of a bad hand that I was dealt.
A year later, Michael was on the run from the FBI. Finally, he turned himself in, thinking he'd get a light sentence as a first-time offender. Instead, he was charged with a racketeering crime that carried a minimum of 30 years.
I thought I would spend the rest of my life in jail. I literally thought it was over. This is it. Every word that they said about me has come true. And all I could feel like my first night in jail was a betrayer. I betrayed all of those people, my grandparents, my parents, all of the people who fought for me to have a life. I have failed them.
Then, before his trial started, a judge said he saw potential in Michael, dismissed the charges, and gave him a second chance at college. Later that year, on the floor of his dorm room at Oral Roberts University, Michael surrendered his life to God.
It was almost like a death and a resurrection. And my life was changed ever since.
Michael graduated and went on to be a successful businessman, then pastor in Baltimore for 19 years. Recently, he joined Bishop T.D. Jakes' ministry, working to reform the education process so every child's potential can be cultivated.
I like to work at the prevention end, where you're doing all that you can do to prevent a child from ever experiencing some of the things I experienced, right? Regardless of where they live, that community, that district has a high quality school that is supporting that child's potential and future.
Michael is also working to take what's known as the Texas Offenders Reentry Initiative nationwide. Started by the Potter's House Church in Dallas, its goal is to empower ex-offenders to maximize their potential and increase their opportunities for successful reintegration into society.
Is that life disposable or is it redeemable? Are we building a culture of punishment or are we building a culture of possibility? And if it's the latter, then that life that might have went off track, that might have found itself in the wrong lane, should not be disposable, right? We should be able to turn that life around restoratively.
Michael believes that everyone can affect positive change by just being empathetic to people around them.
People are hurting, and one of the ways to heal that hurt is to hear it first. Find out where does it hurt and see what you can do about it, and see how you can help. Prayer goes a long way. To say to somebody, I'm praying for you, I really am praying for you, or to stop in that moment and actually pray for them. If you were in their position, what would you do? That's all I'm asking for us to look at people's lives and not go what, but ask why. Not say what's wrong with you, but rather what happened to you. Because when we have that level of empathy, it's gonna make it really hard for all of us to just fall back into what's normal, to fall back into status quo and to keep looking at society as a it is what it is type of thing. It can get better. It certainly can get better. Absolutely.
I love what Michael has to say because it's Romans 8:28 all wrapped up in a pretty package. You know that God takes what the enemy's meant for evil. He works it to good. And you know how wonderful to know that he uses that. And there's another thing here. Don't let somebody else define you by their own poor observation or poor understanding of hope and belief and change.
And you know what a great takeaway is, if we remember nothing else? Not just what, but why. finding out about someone's pain and even praying for them in that moment. Wonderful, wonderful wisdom.
11 years ago, America lost a war hero. But Chris Kyle was much more than a decorated Navy SEAL. He was also a husband to Taya and father to their 2 children.
Taya Kyle is a New York Times bestselling author and the widow of American sniper Chris Kyle, who served 4 tours of duty as a Navy SEAL. Ultimately, Chris lost his life at a shooting range by a man he was trying to help. Since his death, Taya has worked hard to honor her late husband by providing help and hope to those enduring pain and loss. She does so through speaking engagements, writing, and creating her foundation, Taya and Chris Kyle Family, Service Marriage Strong. In her first ever children's book, Prayers for Bears, Taya Kyle teaches kids the importance of gratitude in every season of life.
Well, Taya Kyle is here with us now. We welcome you back to the program. It's been a while since we've seen you.
Yes, thank you. It's good to be here.
Your latest, Prayers for Bears, written by you, it's a great book. It's a children's book, obviously, but what brought you to this place of writing a children's book?
You know, there was so much when I looked at my kids. They're so resilient and strong, and I've seen how God has worked through their lives. Chris's murder, and then everything after that, there were so many things that hit us. And one of the main things after he was first killed was a friend telling me, you'll always have a roof over your head and food to eat. And I thought, well, I don't know if we can afford our house. I mean, I don't know anything at this point. And she said, no, Taya, there are people who love you. You'll always have a roof over your head and food to eat. So even when things were going awry, our prayers have included that. I mean, there are things we have that other people don't that we could easily take for granted.
Well, and that's really what the book is about. It's a story of having a grateful heart. And so you remember these words that a friend shared with you, but now you're left as a mom with 2 children. And how do you, under such adverse circumstances, create that heart of gratitude in them? How did you do that?
Well, you know, I mean, definitely credit to God. And I think He showed me every time that things would go horribly wrong. We had these incredible blessings too. And then He would do something beautiful with the pain, which you know, before you experience it, you think in theory He will, but when you experience it, you know it.
That's real.
And so the thing I really had to learn that I want to encourage other people, I used to say, well, this is bad, but, and I had a great therapist who told me, no, Taya, this is bad and this is good. Because otherwise you start to negate your pain.
Yes.
And you can't do that. And that's part of this story about Bailey Bear. Things are the truth. They are not going well.
Yes.
And there are things to be grateful for. And we know science backs it up. That's why God tells us in the Bible to be grateful. Joy is a wonderful tool against the enemy.
Yeah.
So feel your pain. I realize that's important. I used to try to outrun it, but we have to feel it.
Yes.
And you see what you look for. Look for the gratitude even when you have pain.
So you use this term. How do you pray when you don't have anything to say?
That is such a good question. I have literally some of the most life-changing prayers for me. There was one time I remember sitting in a chair and feeling so exhausted and not knowing even what to pray for. And I just put my hands out like this and I leaned my head back and I said, God, I don't know. Just change me. Just whatever it is I need to pray for, just do the work. And He literally within the week, something that I knew was kind of an issue for me shifted. I wouldn't have prayed for it because it wasn't that big of an issue. And so those times where I've just been completely submissive. It's yours. Just do your work in me. And the same with life. You know, we get so busy and you're ambitious and successful, yes.
You know, yeah.
And when I'd hit my head against the wall on something over and over, I learned to just go, then it's not now. It doesn't mean it's never. It means it's not now, right?
Yes.
And God would do the work and open the door later.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't so overwhelmed, I think I would have kept trying and hitting my head against a wall. But I was too overwhelmed to do that.
And it's so wonderful because in hindsight, when you look back, you can see that you weren't ready for it to change beforehand.
That's right.
But His timing is always perfect. I can tell your faith has just been so anchored and has grown through all of this. Talk about that.
You know, I sometimes think back to who I was before. The core of me, my sense of humor, my heart are the same. My faith has changed me. I don't think people who knew me as a teenager would recognize or believe maybe even, you know, my faith today. And I do see that as God working through the pain and bringing something beautiful. And again, I would have known that in theory, but to experience such a transformation inside of me where I don't fear anymore. And it's like
that's a huge thing in life.
It is huge because what do you know, we can't bear all the things that we could be afraid of, especially social media and all of the things that they'll tell us now could hurt us and harm us, and they probably could. But they're not, I don't have to worry about that because now I just go, I really believe and know from experience that God will point me in the right direction, take care of me for my needs, just as he will someone else's, and we have different needs.
You know, one of the directions God's pointing you and your children in is coming alongside of military families and encouraging them. And it was a shocking stat that of the Navy SEALs, 97% of their marriages fail.
Yeah.
How do we change that, Taya? Good grief. That's an alarming statistic.
It is, and I don't think it's quite as bad now, but when we were in, that was the statistic in enlisted guys. And so what I realized living it is, we just didn't have the tools. We would have done anything, but civilian marriages are different. Civilian counselors can't help with the military world as well as they want to. We have something we're working on with that to teach them too, but the truth is they need the right tools. So at TACF, we do 2 years of programming, 5 programs, and we work from strengths. You got warriors, you need to talk to them about using their strengths in their marriage and do it in ways that are realistic. They don't have 6 o'clock dinner every night. So how do you get those times when you could communicate quickly from a place of strengths? And Baylor University studies our programs, 99.16% success rate over the last few years. Yes, of couples who come out dramatically better. And then the other statistic I want to share with you is the Army did a study. 80% of service suicides are relationship related, not because of anything the two people in the relationship are doing. It's because the service member doesn't have the tools to save the one last thing that they really want as their safety net. And if they don't have the tools while they're suffering, while they're going through trauma, and their wife wouldn't have them, or they don't know how to tell their wife what they need, you know, assuming it's the man, I know sometimes it's the woman, we're just giving them the tools.
That is awesome. You know, you're here in town actually for a special event. I want to mention it as our time is up here, but you can get information on what is called the Resilience in Today's World Conference. It is being, you can go to cbn.com/helping the home front. That's who's supporting all of this. Don't forget Taya Kyle's brand new children's book. It is called Prayers for Bears. Your kids will love it, and so will you. It's available nationwide. Thank you for what you're doing. Talk about making a difference. You're there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Have a great weekend. Here's Colossians. Devote yourself to prayer, being watchful and thankful.